Okay, let's jump right into it. We are doing a deep dive into a major scandal unfolding right now within Brazil's National Institute of Social Security, the INSS.
That's right.
At its core, it's about widespread fraud, specifically these unauthorized deductions hitting retirees' benefits.
And for this deep dive, we've got, well, quite a stack of sources, everything from formal news reports out of Brazil's major outlets, Jornal Nacional, Globo News, CNN, Brazil.
The big ones.
Yeah, and also more pointed commentary, like from Ricardo Dias at Canal Conectado. So our mission really is to take all this material and understand what it tells us about the who, what, how, and why behind these allegations.
Yeah.
We're focusing particularly on what the sources say happened under the current government.
Exactly, because, the material seems to suggest this might be more than just isolated criminal acts. It points towards potential systemic issues, maybe some controversial official decisions, and perhaps even a degree of, laxity within the INSS itself that, according to these reports, kind of created the conditions for this mess.
And that mix of sources is helpful, isn't it? The news outlets give us the facts, the timelines, while commentary like Dias's, it highlights specific concerns and raises some pretty pointed questions from a particular viewpoint presented in the material.
So the starting point, the real problem affecting people directly, are these unauthorized discounts. Money just being taken from the benefits of retirees and pensioners.
Yeah, taken without their knowledge or proper consent, apparently.
And the scale.
Yeah.
The sources suggest it's immense.
Oh, absolutely. Potentially hundreds of thousands of beneficiaries affected. Just think about the impact on vulnerable individuals, people who really rely on every cent of that benefit.
It's huge.
It really is. And it raises fundamental questions for you, doesn't it? Not just about fraud, but about the security and, frankly, the trustworthiness of the entire Social Security system.
Hundreds of thousands. That sounds absolutely staggering. So the immediate question that comes to mind is how? How was this even possible? Didn't the INSS have, security rules in place to prevent exactly this kind of thing?
Well, that's what the sources get particularly concerning. They detail that, yes, new, stricter rules were established back in March of last year.
Okay.
So, to authorize a discount, you are supposed to need advanced electronic signatures, use specific government systems, and, crucially, verify the beneficiary's biometrics.
Right, biometrics. Makes sense.
And get this, there was even a 6-month ban on any new discounts until the official Secure DataPrev biometric system was fully operational.
Okay, that sounds like a pretty robust system being put in place then. So where's the breakdown? What did the reports say went wrong?
But this is where the loophole, or perhaps the alleged ignoring of the rules, comes in. The sources claim that the INSS itself either didn't enforce its own new rules uniformly, or actually created exceptions.
Exceptions. They created workarounds.
That seems to be the allegation.
Yeah.
And these exceptions, these loopholes, apparently allowed associations to bypass the official secure methods.
So what did they use instead, if not the official system?
The sources describe associations allegedly exploiting these gaps by using, quote, parallel systems, parallel biometrics, and relying on specially designed virtual signature websites.
Parallel systems. What does that imply about the security compared to, say, the official DataPrev system?
Well, the critical point raised by the reports is that these parallel systems were often run directly by the associations themselves, not the government.
Oh, okay.
And they reportedly lacked crucial security features like official facial recognition. So the picture painted is you have a secure government system ready or becoming ready.
Right.
But decisions were allegedly made that allowed these less secure parallel methods to continue being used. And that, according to the material, created a clear opening for widespread fraud. That's a major takeaway here.
Wow, that certainly sounds like a recipe for disaster for beneficiaries. Okay, so who exactly were these deductions going to? The sources name several specific associations, don't they?
They do. The entities explicitly mentioned in the material include NDDAMPA, Amar Brazil, ABCB, MasterPrev, and APNAU.
And the numbers associated with these groups, based on what we're seeing here, are truly eye-popping.
Absolutely staggering. And DDAPI, for instance.
Yeah.
The reports say they had never discounted anyone before, ever.
Never.
Never. But then, boom, July 2024, they affiliated over 184,000 people, allegedly using one of these INSS loopholes.
184,000 people in 1 month. That's an incredible volume. How is that even feasible?
It raises questions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And they weren't outliers in terms of speed and scale. APN started a bit earlier, October 2023, and reportedly made over 175,000 discounts in just its first month.
Good grief.
Then you've got Amar Brazil, ABCB, affiliating 39,000 in December 2023, and Master Prev adding over 15,000 in July of this year, 2024.
That kind of volume immediately makes you wonder about consent, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And the beneficiary complaints seem to back that suspicion up pretty strongly.
Precisely. What's highlighted in these reports, and it's quite stark, is that these four entities rank extremely high in complaints filed through the UNSS app.
Yep.
The sources state that over 99%, let me repeat that, over 99% of the discounts made by these specific associations are contested by the beneficiaries themselves.
Over 99%.
Yeah, that statistic alone really speaks volumes about whether people knowingly agreed to these deductions, wouldn't you say?
It screams no. So how did the leadership within the INSS itself figure into the situation according to the material we've looked at?
Well, the sources point specifically to the former president, Alessandro Stefanutto.
Okay.
He is alleged to have not only authorized but also twice extended the use of these parallel biometrics.
Extended them, even after.
Yes, pushing their allowed use first to December 2024 and then again to January 2025. And this is the crucial part. Despite the fact that the official DataPrev system was reportedly ready back in September 2024.
Right, you said that.
And despite ongoing investigations into fraud being active at the time.
So let me get this straight. According to the reports, even with a secure system available and active fraud investigations happening, the alleged decision was made to keep allowing the less secure parallel methods.
That's what the sources report, yes. Yeah. Now, his successor, the current president, Gilberto Waller Júnior, has been somewhat more public about it, according to the news.
Oh, so?
He reportedly admitted publicly that authorizing the parallel system was in fact a mistake that enabled fraud. He's quoted saying the INSS shouldn't have relaxed the rules for potentially non-upstanding institutions, especially after getting advice from control bodies.
That's quite an admission.
It is a significant admission, as reported in the material, and it definitely raises questions about why those earlier decisions were made in the first place.
We also have that perspective from the commentator, Ricardo Diaz. His view adds another layer, though it's presented as, well, intensely cynical and critical in the sources.
Yeah. Diaz's commentary, as reported, is far from neutral. He seems to suggest deliberate intent to embezzle funds, using phrases like scrape the barrel, which he attributes, by the way, to President Lula's alleged instructions.
Mm-hmm. Strong words.
Very strong. And he uses sarcasm to question how these loopholes just sort of appeared, and strongly implies deliberate facilitation by individuals within the INSS.
Right, and it's important we stress, of course, that this is his commentary presented in the sources. It's his interpretation, not necessarily a proven fact presented elsewhere.
Absolutely. We're reporting what the source material contains. It represents a specific, critical perspective on the situation.
Okay. And we should also mention the official bodies looking into all of this.
Right. The sources name Brazil's Controller General, the CGU, the Federal Audit Court, which is the TCU, and the Federal Police, the PFF. These are the entities formally conducting investigations into this alleged fraud.
So it's being taken seriously at high levels.
Their involvement certainly signifies that, yes. It's under formal scrutiny by government control and law enforcement bodies.
Going back to the impact on the people involved, the retirees, we mentioned that shocking over 99% contested rate for these specific associations.
Yeah, and there's an anecdote in the sources about a woman named Maria das Graças that really brings it home, I think.
What happened to her?
Well, she managed to take legal steps to stop future deductions from her benefit. So she stopped the bleeding, so to speak.
Okay.
But she's reportedly left completely uncertain if or when she'll ever get the money back that was already taken.
Oh, man.
That personal story just illustrates the real-world consequence, doesn't it? The financial strain, the anxiety, the uncertainty for individuals caught up in this.
Absolutely. So, connecting the dots here, what does all of this tell us about the broader situation, or maybe the why behind it all?
Well, the material directly links this scandal to those ongoing investigations by the CGU, TCU, and PF. It's not happening in a vacuum. It's being actively investigated.
And this seems to have generated significant political heat. The sources report strong calls for a Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry, CPMI, right, to dig much deeper into these, well, multi-billion RIAS frauds.
Yes, there's definitely pressure for CPMI. However, another key point raised repeatedly by the sources is the allegation that the government is actively working to block, or at least delay, the formation of this CPMI.
Block it. And what reason is given for that alleged effort to block the investigation, according to the material we have?
Well, the commentator Ricardo Diaz, he attributes this alleged delay to a desire to prevent the investigation from reaching politically connected individuals.
Okay.
And he makes a very specific claim, which, again, we're just reporting impartially from the sources. He alleges that associations linked to figures like President Lula's brother or certain PT deputies were not among the 12 associations specifically targeted for asset freezes requested by justice bodies.
That's a very pointed claim presented in the material about who might be implicated or perhaps shielded.
It is indeed. The sources also discuss the role of the Senate President, Davi Alcalumber. They report he's under pressure regarding the CPMI.
Makes sense.
And note speculation that he might stall the process, possibly, it's suggested, at the government's request. So this highlights the political maneuvering described around actually getting this investigation off the ground.
And there's that detail we touched on earlier, which seems pretty significant in this context of accountability, doesn't it?
You mean the timing of the authorizations?
Yeah, the bit about authorizing entities already under investigation.
Right. The sources report that the INSS reportedly authorized entities that were already under investigation by the CGU and TCU to continue using these problematic virtual signature systems after the INSS was apparently aware of those investigations.
Wow.
That fact, if accurate according to these reports, really raises serious questions about the willingness or perhaps the ability to shut down the avenues for fraud, even when the problems were known.
Definitely. And one more piece from the commentary regarding the timing of a potential CPMI.
Yes, Dias suggests in his commentary that delaying the CPMI until closer to future elections could be a deliberate tactic.
A tactic for what?
To sort of reheat the issue politically at a more advantageous time rather than perhaps resolving it now. Again, that's his interpretation from the source material.
Okay, so let's try and pull this together based on the material we've reviewed. It's a lot to take in.
It is. I mean, the complex picture presented by these sources is essentially one where a system meant to protect vulnerable retirees appears to have been seriously compromised by controversial official decisions that allegedly created loopholes.
Loopholes exploited by associations.
Exactly. Allegedly exploited for mass, unauthorized deductions, which then led to this overwhelming number of complaints from beneficiaries.
And all of this is happening amidst ongoing formal investigations.
Right, by major control bodies and the police.
And what sounds like a significant political battle over whether, how deeply, and maybe even when accountability will actually be pursued.
That sums it up pretty well based on the reports.
It certainly paints a challenging picture. You know, when systems designed to safeguard vulnerable populations seem, according to these sources anyway, to actually enable the very problems they should prevent. And then the pursuit of investigations apparently faces political resistance. What does that ultimately suggest about the challenge of ensuring true accountability, especially in these really complex bureaucratic and political environments?
It's a tough question, isn't it? And it's definitely one the sources leave us with thinking about the hurdles to getting clear answers and ultimately resolution.
Indeed. Well, that's our deep dive into the INSS scandal based on the material you shared today.